Members, as Vice Chair of our Legislative Jewish Caucus, I'm pleased today to present Senate Resolution 109, which designates May 2018 as State of California Month of Commemoration of Israel's 70th anniversary. 2018 marks the 70th year since the founding of the modern State of Israel, which was officially declared an independent nation today, May 14th, 1948. The establishment of Israel as a homeland for the Jewish people followed the destruction of much of European Jewry during the Holocaust. Israel has much to commemorate and celebrate, most notably that it has established the most politically stable democracy in the Middle East. The people of Israel enjoy a dynamic society with unique and vital economic, political, cultural, and intellectual life. They've developed an advanced entrepreneurial economy. It's among the world's leaders of the high-tech industry. It's at the forefront of research and development in the fields of renewable energy sources, water conservation, medicine. And since 2015, in fact, the State of California and Israel have had a Memorandum of Understanding, an MOU, which fosters joint research and development, enhances business relationships and educational opportunities between Israeli and California universities. And one exciting area of collaboration has been the shared work on developing a sustainable water future. And we're learning a great deal from each other in terms of strategies to address that perennial issue. Members, Jews living in other parts of the world have maintained a profound spiritual and emotional connection to the land of Israel. We certainly do here. Of course, we know that Israel is in the news right now. It's very much related to this 70th anniversary. Today literally is the 70th birthday of the State of Israel. And I do want to take a moment to read a prayer that is probably my favorite prayer from the liturgy that we would read on Saturday mornings on the Sabbath. And it's a prayer for peace. May we see the day when war and bloodshed cease, when a great peace will embrace the whole world, then nation will not threaten nation, and mankind will not again know war. For all who live on earth shall realize we have not come into being to hate or to destroy. We have come into being to praise, to labor, and to love. Compassionate God, bless the leaders of all nations with the power of compassion. Fulfill the promise conveyed in Scripture, I will bring peace to the land, and you shall lay down, and no one shall terrify you. I will rid the land of vicious beasts, and it shall not be ravaged by war. Let love and justice flow like a mighty stream. Let peace fill the earth as the waters fill the sea. And let us say amen, and I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Allen. Senator Monning.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. I want to thank my good friend from Santa Monica for bringing this recognition. I want to acknowledge our guests today and the many exchanges that we do benefit from with technology and trade, etc. I also want to recognize the important history of the establishment of the Jewish state, which is marked 70 years ago, but we know the history goes much deeper than that 70 years. But for many in the world, and certainly in the Jewish community, the establishment of the State of Israel provided refuge for people fleeing persecution, survivors of families who perished in the Holocaust, and it became a beacon of hope and life and respect for life and human rights. And yet today I'm pained and troubled to see the continued conflict in the region. The shooting of over 50 unarmed Palestinians at the wall, protesting a history in their view of discrimination, of occupation, and a denial of human rights. This floor is not the place where foreign policy is normally debated, and it certainly, our declarations and resolutions rarely, if ever, influence U.S. foreign policy. But I do think it's incumbent upon all of us, in the face of the continued violence, that we raise a voice, a unified voice, calling, as my colleague did, for a recommitment to peace and a peace process. Friends, there's no example of peace being won through violence. In fact, if we look at other intractable conflict in South Africa, resolved not on a battlefield, but at a peace negotiation. Or Northern Ireland, intractable conflict, hundreds of years. Solved on a battlefield? No. Solved in negotiations in the Good Friday Agreement. Or El Salvador or Guatemala, and the list goes on, where people caught in conflict feel that there is no outlet, there is no option. It's incumbent upon all of us to reward those who pursue peace through negotiation, peace through dialogue. That has to be the resonant call from this body, from our nation's leaders, and indeed from around the world. Friends, peace through dialogue.
Thank you, Senator Monning. Senator Wiener.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Colleagues, I rise in support of this resolution in support of the State of Israel. And I rise as a Jewish man. I rise as someone who has a family. My family came to the United States over 100 years ago as immigrants to this country. And they came because they were fleeing persecution, because in Eastern Europe and Russia, for centuries and centuries, Jews were slaughtered, had their property stolen from them, were rounded up, were just brutalized. The Holocaust, although the extreme of that kind of situation, the most extreme example of persecution of the Jewish community, unfortunately, was not out of the blue. This has been happening to my community for millennia, and it peaked with the Holocaust, and hopefully that will never, ever happen again to any community. The State of Israel is not just another country. For my community, the State of Israel represents the reality we have now that did not exist before, that is a place where, as a Jew, we are always welcome. We can always go for safety and for refuge. Because let's remember what happened before the Holocaust. We could have saved many, many Jews from being slaughtered in the Holocaust, but this country, for example, wouldn't take my people in. They were refused entry. They went around in boats and tried to find a place that would take them in, and instead they ended up having to return to Europe, where they were put into gas chambers, where they were slaughtered. Adults, children, elderly people, disabled people. And this world bears a responsibility for what it has done to my community. And part of that responsibility is ensuring a viable and secure State of Israel. And that is incredibly important, and California should be on record supporting that. We also must have an independent and secure and viable Palestinian state. We must have a two-state solution. And unfortunately, with some recent events, including in this country, we seem to have moved away from that, and we need to get back to it. We need two viable states living in peace and harmony, both of which are thriving. We want everyone to thrive. So I support this resolution. We must stand with the State of Israel, and also we must insist on a viable two-state solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Wiener. Senator Stern.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief. Staying within our purview as a state government, not trying to exercise what feels somewhat like global power at times, but we do not have a State Department in this state. And yet, the Jewish people of California and the Israeli community of California have to suffer through all the downside, but rarely get to enjoy the fruits of the labor of a democratic government in the State of Israel. So when you're a college student on campus and you're dealing with anti-Semitism that is ostensibly an anti-Israel movement, but really becomes a wedge to divide minority communities against the Jewish community, there's a toxicity that moves through our state that I think we can all resolve and agree has to be stamped out and dealt with. We can all disagree about what the state of Israel ought to be doing, and in fact, they do. No one disagrees better than Jews. We disagree with each other constantly. That is the nature of dialogue. And when I went to Israel earlier this year, trust me, it is not a fixed and stable conversation over there. It is incredibly dynamic, active, agitating. There is all kinds of political controversy, and democracy is alive and well in the state of Israel. So I think as a state, we ought to be doing everything we can, not to engage as a State Department and as a proxy arm of the federal government, but to protect our own, to protect a climate of tolerance, and to embrace the relationship that we've created with Israel that actually does serve state purposes, whether it's battling our drought, protecting the LGBTQ community, or standing up for a more sustainable future that we can actually share in. I think there's a lot of good to be focused on, and even with the bad, even with those tensions, I still have faith in that state that they can survive this through an active democratic process, that they'll actually emerge from these years stronger than ever before, and we all ought to pray for peace in that future. So with that, I rise and ask for your support of SR 109.
Thank you, Senator Stern. Senator Wieckowski.
I'm going to stay off this resolution, Mr. President. Yesterday I would have had no problems. Given today's news, I would hope one of the whereases of this resolution is that whereas Israel regularly sends humanitarian aid, search and rescue teams, mobile hospitals, and other emergency supplies to help victims of disasters around the world, I'd hope that that would extend to the Gaza, and that we'll all reflect on what's happening and continue those dialogues that my colleagues have talked about.
Great. Thank you, Senator Wieckowski. Any further debate or discussion? Senator Jackson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, colleagues. You know, this is a very difficult issue. As the Jewish woman on this floor, I am both proud and ambivalent and somewhat saddened. Israel is a place where Jews were allowed to seek a home after going through one of the worst Holocausts in humankind's history. 6 million, including members of my family, were killed by the bigotry, the hatred, the racism, the anti-Semitism that we saw in Europe in the 1930s and 40s. And we see some of it coming back today here in this country. And so I see Israel as a symbol and as a refuge for Jews around the world who, for reasons that make absolutely no sense to me, are frequently vilified and stereotyped and discriminated against because of the religious background that we have, that we share, our culture, our commitment to social justice. I find it hard to understand why there is anti-Semitism in this world, but there is. And so Israel has been a place for the last 70 years where all Jews can feel at home. Every Jew in the world, whether discriminated against in the shtetl in Russia, which brought my grandparents to the United States, or in our own communities to this very day. And so I am grateful for Israel. I am grateful that this nation was born starting in the early 1900s in response to Britain taking over Palestine, in response to the fact that 6 million had to die in order for the world to openly embrace what historically, biblically, if you will, has been a home for Jews, the longest standing religion in the world. And I too, though, share the concerns about the fact that there continues to be war between Semites. And I remember a few years ago when there was a Palestinian girl who strapped a bomb onto herself and went into a public place and blew herself up, and within it was another young girl, and Time magazine, I think, had them face to face, silhouetted. One Jew, one Palestinian, one Arab. They look like sisters. I swear they were sisters. And in fact, in the Semitic world, we are all brothers and sisters. In the world of humanity, we are all brothers and sisters. And yet today we found an example where, because of probably, in my opinion and those of many, an ill-gotten decision to move from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, the American embassy, which in and of itself was known to generate the kind of hostility that we saw and the reaction we saw from Palestinians. I ask myself, is there any way in the cradle of civilization and religion, 3 of the 4 great religions of the world started right there in that area, why we cannot find peace? Why we cannot create peace? And when Rabin, I believe it was, and Arafat came so close to making peace, it was a decision by those Arab leaders that peace was not in the best interests of their community, of their countries. This is inexplicable, inexcusable, and reprehensible. And so I say and offer this on this floor today. I believe we need to honor, we need to recognize the state of Israel. And I think we also need to recognize and sit down as a people, have the women sit down together, the mothers who have lost children on both sides of this battlefield for decades. How is it we find peace? Neighbor and neighbor, nor shall they lift up swords and beat their swords into plowshares, I think is the other part of that prayer. Neither shall they know war anymore. I think we have to live and set an example. I think we have to honor what this nation has done. At the same time, we have to recognize that unless and until we sit down as neighbors, as friends, as fellow human beings, we will see war, if not in Israel, then elsewhere. And I think that today, we should recognize the positives and urge these sides to sit down and make peace once and for all, because after all, they are our brothers and our sisters. And with that, I would urge and I vote.
Thank you, Senator Jackson. Senator Morlock?
Thank you, Mr. President. I had the privilege of serving on the Sesquicentennial Foundation for the state of California. I was the vice chair, and we held events to commemorate the 150th anniversary of California, but there were groups that were not happy about this occasion. There was a large native population that was almost wiped out by a major population movement to California in the search of gold. And we moved out the Californios, and you know, we live in a broken world with broken people, and some of these things happen. Nothing is perfect, nothing moves in harmony. This is just the way things occur. And as a Goyim who is very supportive of the Jews, my family suffered through World War II. And it was not a pretty sight to have neighbors removed. So in 1948, when the Jews were able to find a sanctuary and to have a state, after fighting and still fighting oppression and persecution, this is a milestone worthy of supporting, because it is a reminder that we are in a broken world with broken people, but we have hope in the fact that we can start fresh and look forward. So I support SR 109, and I rejoice in this 70th anniversary milestone. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Morlock. Senator Stone?
Thank you, Mr. President. As a Jewish man, I want to congratulate Israel on their 70th anniversary of becoming a state, and I support SR 109. And I speak as a Jew that had grandparents that were immigrants from Russia and Poland. Many of you have heard my great-grandmother, Molly Goldstein, was the only one in her family that saw this maniac in Germany rising to power, and warned her family that this man could be very dangerous, and her family just said, he'll be nothing more than a passing phenomenon. So the entire family, with the exception of my great-grandmother, Molly Goldstein, never made it out of Poland, ended up in the ovens in Auschwitz, how I wish some of them would have survived and how I wish some of them could have gone to the new state of Israel, a place where they could live in peace and harmony and express their religious beliefs without fear of being admonished, being criticized, being discriminated against, or even killed. It's shameful that we see in the United States today that we have anti-Semitisms that are right here in California, right in our UC of California system, that I know members, my colleagues, have come together and brought chancellors in and have expressed and articulated our dismay that we would see this kind of discrimination in this day and age. It's also very troubling for me to see that some of these ignorant, crazy people are even running for higher office, including United States Senate in the state of California, that are professed to be anti-Semites, that believe that Jewish people are subhuman people. So I proudly stand with the members of the California State Senate as we look at this 70th anniversary. And I know that we've often said that we don't want to engage in State Department activities. We don't want to engage in federal issues in our support for Israel. But as I hear some members that are concerned about the right of Israel to protect itself and how that can often be misconstrued. I've known Israel in the 3 times that I've been there, and I'm planning on going there this November once again, to not be a country that is thriving on violence and murder and war. This is a country that wants to live independently as a Jewish state without fear of annihilation, understanding that if you look at the perimeter of Israel, there are rockets that are aimed for Israel. There are rockets that arrive in Israel. There was a nuclear deal that was entertained by a previous administration, even when many of us, including myself, rose and said, you are allowing a rogue nation that has promised to blow Israel off the face of the earth, the weapons of mass destruction. It is an existential threat. And what do we do today, my friends? We realize that those threats are real and they have been ongoing. So while I pray for peace in the Middle East between Israel, Palestinians, Arabs. I know that that peace is not as simple as just praying for it and wanting it. But I always see Israel placing the olive branch out for peace, and many times gets that olive branch swiped across their faces. So I, for one, will always stand with Israel's right to self-determination and to protect themselves, while at the same time praying for humanity, that all people, all women, all children should live in harmony, should live in peace in the Middle East, with hopefully the United States and countries like Russia that should work in a harmonious way to promote this peace and tranquility, because what we've seen, this horrific loss of life, is shameful. These are human beings, these are women and children that are dying unnecessarily in an area that has been troubled for the past 3,000 to 4,000 years. It's time, my friends, to stand in solidarity with Israel, support their right to protect themselves, and at the same time promote peace in the Middle East once and for all. For those reasons, I recommend an aye vote on SR 109.
Thank you, Senator Stone. Seeing no further debate or discussion, Senator Allen, would you like to close?
Members, I want to thank everybody for their heartfelt thoughts. We do pray for peace. We celebrate the extraordinary accomplishments of the State of Israel, and we ask for a future where we'll be able to live in harmony. And with that, I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you. Secretary, please call the roll.
Allen. Aye. Anderson. Atkins. Aye. Bates. Aye. Bell. Aye. Berryhill. Bradford. Aye. Cannella. I. De Leon. Dodd. De Leon, I. Dodd, I. Fuller. Gaines.
Aye.
I. Galgiani. I. Glazer. I. Hernandez. I. Hertzberg. I. Hill. I. Wesso. Jackson. I. Lara. I. Leva. I. McGuire. I. Mitchell. I. Monning. I. Morlock. I. Morrell. I. Newman. I. Wynn. I. Nilsson. I. Pan. I. Porcentino. I. Roth. I. Skinner. I. Stern. I. Stone. I. Vidak. I. Wachowski. Wiener. I. Wilk. I.
Secretary, please call the absent members.
Anderson, I. Berryhill, I. Fuller, I. Wesso, Wachowski.
Ayes 37, noes 0. The resolution is adopted. And Senator Allen, you have some introductions?
Yeah, so I want to thank first the members for voting for the resolution. We're honored to have some guests in back of the chamber to help commemorate this occasion. We're going to be presenting a copy of the resolution to the Consul General to the Pacific Northwest, Shlomi Kaufman. He represents the state of Israel in Alaska, Northern California, Idaho, Montana, Oregon, Washington. He began his appointment in August 2017 and comes to us directly from Jerusalem. With him is the Deputy Consul General Ravit Baer. And we also have representatives of several organizations here, including the Jewish Public Affairs Committee of California, the American Jewish Congress, both of San Francisco and Los Angeles, and the Sacramento Jewish Federation. And we've got some other guests up in the gallery who are celebrating this occasion with us as well. And so I wanted to welcome them all here today. Thank you.
Welcome to the California State Senate.